In this video, we're going to create an interactive chest that are going to be able to spawn items when the player interacts with them. And when the player interacts with these chests, the items are going to bounce out, so there's a little bit of an animation when the chest actually opens. Also, within the last week or so, Godot has released a new version, so the current stable version is 4.4. I've updated this project to be in 4.4. You shouldn't necessarily have to, but if you do, or if you want to, you're going to see on the screen what this is going to look like. It's just going to re-import a lot of files into Godot, and you should be good to go, and there should be no issues with running this project in 4.4. So to kick this off, let's create a new scene, and what we're going to make is a 2D scene. We're going to make this a static body, and we can go in and rename this to just be our chest. So let's save this. I'm going to put this in our items folder. I think it kind of relates to that. And while we're here, we can just make a script for this. We'll give this a class name of chest, and let's just save that. Let's go back to the scene here, and let's just add the rest of the child nodes. So we're going to have a sprite 2D here. We're going to have a collision shape. We're going to have an animation player so that we can play the open animation. We're going to create a area 2D, which we're going to actually call our interact area, which needs a collision shape as a child. And that's all we're going to need for our chest here. So let's go to the sprite 2D, and while we're going to be actually assigning all of the sprites via the code, I just want to get one set up so that we can visually see what this is going to look like, because we're going to be using Atlas textures. So let's make a new Atlas texture here. And the good thing about how our sprites are set up is that we'll just go to the forest for right now. So if we go into the forest resources and drag that in, we can go into our edit region. So all of our chests are going to be in this same exact style of Atlas texture in all of our different sprite sheets, which is good because then we can use each biome's sprite sheet and we can apply the exact same animations to all of them. We're just going to update what they look like visually, because in this instance, our forest, this has a green here, but in our desert, it's going to be an orange. So while the chests all look the same, they do have slightly different appearance to them. But now we have this selected here. We're going to go to our animation, and we have one V frame and two H frames. So this is our chest right here. Let's just give it a collision shape. We're going to do a rectangle, and for the collision shape, I'm going to make this more tightly connected to our chest than we are the interact area. In the animation player, we can create a new animation, and the only one that we need to make is going to be one that we're going to call open. I'm going to make this 0.2 seconds, and it's going to snap on 0.2. So let's zoom in here, and we need to go back to our sprite, and we're just going to snap on the first frame for open, and then at 0.2 it's going to be on frame 1. So now when we play this, our chest will open. So now let's make the interact area. So let's just create the collision shape here. We're going to do a rectangle, and I'm going to make this slightly bigger than our actual chest so the player doesn't have to be right up against the chest in order to open it. And the last thing that we're going to have to do with our chest is we need to set the proper layers and masks for this new item. So in our chest, let's go to the main static body 2D node, and we're going to be layer 3, and we can mask for 5. And we're going to do the same thing on the collision shape 2D under our interact area. Or sorry, we need to actually click on the interact area and set that to layer 3 and mask on 5. And that's all that we're going to have to do in this scene here. So now we need to focus on the script here, and we're going to actually make this a tool script. So let's add @tool at the top here, And the reason that we're going to do this is similar to our item pickup scene. We want this to run in the editor. So this is going to allow us to see the different textures in real time. And what we're going to do is create different types of textures for each of our different biomes. And then depending on which type of chest we're using, it will update to that specific texture. So it's a little bit more upfront setup here, but it will make assigning chests a little bit easier down the road. So the first thing we're going to do is create an enum for our chest type. And we're going to have forest, cave, desert, and tundra. I believe those are all of the biomes that we have set up. There are more images in our assets than that, but let's just get set up with these few now. And we are going to have an onReady variable for our sprite, our animation player, as well as our interact area. Let's just recall this to just sprite. And then we're going to have a lot of export values where they're going to be setters. So we're going to set each chest type using this enum. So let's create an export variable for our chest type, which will be of the type chest type. And we're just going to default the chest to forest so we get something if we don't choose anything. And we're going to set on the value. The chest type will equal the value. And then we are going to update our chest texture, which is a method that we will be creating shortly. So we will get an error there, but let's just get the next export variable set up before we go and work on the rest of the script here. So we're going to create another export variable, and we're going to call this our forest chest, which is going to be a texture 2D. And we need to set on the value, and our forest chest is going to equal the value, and if chest type equals chest type dot forest, we're going to again update chest texture. Okay, so we're going to end up doing this for each chest type in this enum, but before we do that, let's go build out a little bit more of this so we can get rid of some of these errors and actually be able to see how this works. So before we get into our methods, we're going to add a couple of other variables. We're going to have two more export variables, which we're going to have the loot, which is going to be an array of items. So this is going to be what is actually inside of the chest. We can default that to an empty one. And then we can export variable the loot quantities, which is going to be an array of integers. And again, that can also be defaulted to an empty array. And then two normal variables, which is going to be can interact, which is a bool, which will be false, and variable for is opened, which again is also a bool and is false. So now we can make our ready method here. We're just going to pass initially right now. And let's get our update sprite texture method set up. Oops, sorry, it should be chest texture, not sprite. And what we're going to do here is if we don't have a sprite, we just return so we don't do this. And then otherwise, we're going to do a match. So we're going to match on the chest type. And then if the chest type forest, our sprite.texture is going to equal our forest chest. So let's save this. And so now when we click on this chest here, we're going to have all of the chest types that we can select from. Right now we only have forest set up, but we need to go into this forest chest right here. And what we're going to do is we go down to our atlas texture, we click into here, and then we have to go back in and reset up this region right here. So we're just going to choose these two, and that's all we have to do. So now we can go into our test level, or whichever level we want. I'm going to go into the test level just because that's where we are using our forest. So let's open this up, go to the 2D view, and let's drag in a chest here. So now I can actually see this chest here, which is good. If we didn't make this a tool script and we didn't set this up the way that we did, we wouldn't be able to actually see this chest here. With all the visuals, you can't really see that it is the green specific to the forest chest. But let's go set up the desert one, and it will visually look a little bit different. So let's go here, let's go back to our script. And I am just going to copy this. We'll just do this for all of them right now. So we have 4 chest types. So let's do this. And this forest chest is going to be cave chest. We're going to have desert chest. And we are going to have tundra chest. Then we just have to make sure we're replacing all of these values here. Cave chest is there. And then forest is fine here. And then in the cave chest, we check on chest type cave, chest type desert, and then lastly, chest type tundra. And now we need to go update our match here. So we're going to have the same situation for each of these, where this forest is going to be cave, we're going to have desert, and then we're going to have tundra. And then they need to correspond to each of their chests. Okay. In order to make this work though, we need to make sure we're in our main sprite node. Can bring this down, and now you can see we have these other export variables for our cave chest. So let's go to the Atlas texture here. We're going to go up. We're going to find our cave here. I believe it's in cave objects. So then we go edit our region, update that, save. So now if we're in our 2D, let's just zoom in. Hopefully we can see that it's a little bit. Actually, let's just go to the chest here. And what we're going to do is go to the collision shape. We're just going to remove the alpha on both of these, just so we can see how this is all looking inside of our test level. So here we are. We can see that green now. So if we click on the chest inside of our scene and we update this to cave, there we go. It's different now. And I think that's good. This allows us to go through a drop down here, and depending on what biome we're in, we can just select the type of chest that we want so that it blends in properly with our biome. So let's go fill out, I'm going to revert this to forest. Let's go fill out the desert chest and the tundra chest real quick on our base chest class. So let's go back into here, and we're just going to do the same thing for the Atlas textures for the rest of these. So let's find our desert. I believe it's in desert resources for this one. And then we just select those. Minimize this, and then we'll go to the tundra, add an atlas, click into it. And then we have tundra resources here. Let's edit the region, and that's all that we have to do. And we're going to work on the interactions for these, but for this loot and loot quantities, how this is going to work is if we click into our loot, we get to click how many items are going to be in this chest. So we can quick load an item. We have 2. It's looking for these resources. We'll put a health potion, and we'll put a pie in here. Whoops. Then the quantities, these have to align. So 0, this index 0 in quantities is going to align with the index 0 here. So we can put 4. And for pies, they aren't currently stackable. So even if we choose a quantity that's larger than 1 here, it will just go to 1, but we're just going, for posterity's sake, to just put this at 1, and we're going to save this. And now we need to go back to actually open the chest and spawn some items. So we need to go back into our script, and we're going to create 2 methods here. So the first is we're going to use a built-in for input. And all we're going to look for is if we can interact, in the event.isActionPressed is our interact input mapping, and not is opened. Animation player, play, open. So we're going to play our open animation there. We're going to mark is opened to true, can interact to false. So this is going to be tied in to all of these. And in order for us to properly work with these variables, we're going to have to connect to some signals. But at the end of our input method here, inside of this if block, we're going to do what we're going to call spawn items. So we're going to create spawn items. We're just going to pass for now. Is we're going to go into our interact area, and let's go click on our node here, and we're going to connect to the body entered signal as well as the body exited. And we're going to do just a couple of quick, simple things in here. If the body is our character and the chest is not opened, we can interact. Otherwise, when we exit this interact area and the body is the character, we just set can interact equal to false. And in spawn items, we're going to do a little bit of a bounce effect. So the items don't just plop right out of the chest. We're going to make them actually bounce and have a little built-in delay so that we can't pick them up immediately. So let's go into spawn items here. The first thing we need to do is get our item pickup scene as a variable, and we're going to preload our item pickup scene. And then we're going to do a for loop for I in range of the minimum of the loot dot size and the loot quantities dot size. And if we go into our loot at the index doesn't equal null, then we're going to proceed with the rest of this. So we're going to get our pickup, which is going to be our item pickup scene. We're going to instantiate it. The pickup.item is going to equal the loot at the index that we're in. And then the pickup.quantity is going to equal the loot quantities at that same index. Then we need to add it to our scene. So it's actually going to be inside of the scene that we're in. And we're just going to get the current scene. We're going to add child and pass in the pickup. And we're going to set the global positions for the pickup. So global position is going to be equal to the global position minus a vector 2 of 0 and 10, just to give it a little bit of an offset. So we're going to position it slightly above our chest. And then we need to create a tween for our bounce effect. Let's just view this right now, actually. So this should still work. These items should just auto-populate on top of our chest. So let's go back to our test level. Let's play this. Let's walk down here. There we go. So you can see that I auto-picked up these items, right? That's because they were positioned more or less right at my character. If I replay this and I open it from this side, there you go. Then they both just pop on top of each other. I can still go and pick them up. I don't like that though, so let's continue with actually adding this tween here. So let's create that variable for a tween, which is going to be a create tween. Bring in a variable for the bounce height, which is going to be a random float range between 10 and 20. We're gonna do the same thing for bounce distance, which is going to be a rand f range between 5 and 15, but we're going to multiply that by sine rand f range between -1 and 1. And then we're going to have a bounce duration, which is going to be equal to a rand f range of 0.3 and 0.5. And then we're going to have two tween properties here, where the first is going to do the bounce going up, and then the second one is going to have the bounce coming down. So let's get our tween. We'll get a tween property, and we're going to do it on the pickup. Pass in, oops, not animation player. We want to do in quotes position, pickup.position plus vector 2 of our bounce distance divided by 2, and then our negative bounce height. Need another comma after that, and then we do our bounce duration divided by 2. After we add all those things to the tween property, we're just going to set ease, and then we are going to do tween and we're going to ease out. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and let's copy all of this, and we're going to do this again for our bounce out, but we're just going to change a couple of things. This needs to be position, not the way that I spelled it, so let's fix that. We still want to add to the vector2, but we're going to do our bounce distance and just 0. And then the bounce duration divided by 2 can stay the same. Instead of ease out, we want to ease in. And that's all that we have to do right now. So let's go play our main scene. Here you can go. You see they kind of bounce out. I don't really like that they ended up kind of staying on top of each other. So let's see if we can tweak a setting in here to fix that. Yeah, here, I don't want bounce duration. I want to be bounce distance, not bounce duration. So now when we play this, yeah, they land in different places. Okay, so let's play this again. And now they go, yeah, they're landing in different places. So I think the one issue that we have is still, if we're on top here, I can auto pick up the items if it lands on me. And also the chest, whenever it's opened, has a little bit different of a collision shape. So I think for now, I'm just going to make the collision shape a little bit bigger, since we can still interact there. That'll solve sort of the visual there. In order for us to add the pickup delay, we're going to have to go back to our actual item pickup script. So we're going to add another export variable, and we're going to call this a pickup delay. It's going to be a float, and we're just going to do 0.7 for right now. And then we're going to have a regular variable for can be picked up, which is a Boolean. We'll default this to false. And in our ready method, we want to disable the collision initially and then enable it after our delay. So inside of this if not is editor hint if statement, or if block, we're going to, if we have a collision shape, we're going to collision shape disabled to true. And then outside of that if block, we're going to do an await on get tree. We're going to create a timer on our pickup delay on the timeout, and then afterwards, if we have a collision shape, we're just going to re-enable it. So collision shape disabled equals false, and then can be picked up equals true. We're also going to modify our update sprite and our onBody entered methods. So below the update sprite, inside of that first if block, we're going to, if we have a collision shape and not collision shape dot shape, we get a variable of a circle. So we're going to create a collision shape if we don't have one for this item. And it's going to be equal to a new circle shape 2D. And we're going to set the circle radius equals to 10. And then the collision shape dot shape equals our circle. And then on our body entered, what we're going to first do is if we can't pick up the item, so if not can be picked up, we're just going to return. And that's actually all that we need to do. So now if we go back and we go play our scene here, we can see there was a slight delay from when I was able to actually pick up that pie, even though it was directly on top of my character. So I think this is a good way for us to start adding some chests and adding some loot, which will allow us to expand on, and we can even use some of these bounce qualities for when we're going to have our character be farming materials, whether it be from trees or from rocks. So we'll be able to reuse some of this code down the road as well.